Hello everybody and welcome back to the Endless Party.
Peace out, friends.
Peace out.
Oh, that's in India.
Peace here.
Peace here. Peace in, friends.
Peace in, friends. Alright, so the title of this podcast, you might be
Probably really curious.
As confused as to why. So it's the Poppy Syndrome Party. And what does that refer to? It refers to this syndrome that is mainly known in Australia, New Zealand, and England. And a poppy is a sort of a flower.
It's reddish orange, but
it's a pretty
black
flower.
center. It's cute.
So what it refers to is the highest poppy, or the poppy that grows the tallest, gets chopped first. And so that just means that those who stand out, those who are different, those who are successful are the first to be criticized, ridiculed, and belittled. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, is why some people feel the need to criticize those who are successful, as well as how to combat that. So, for example, we've already found the internet trolls within this podcast, and we're going to talk about how we really just brush them off and just push them to the side.
Those internet trolls.
So that's what we're going to talk about today. I wanted to start off with a couple comparisons to the poppy syndrome, and there's just a lot of different references all over the world in all different cultures. And so in Japan, it's the nail that sticks out gets hammered first. In China, it's the tall tree attracts the wind. And then even in Africa, there's a story of wildebeests. And wildebeests are so almost identical, just like our baby girls. Identical that even scientists can't really differentiate which wildebeest is which. So they'll go and study them, and then they'll look away to look at their notes, look back and realize they're looking at a completely different wildebeest that they were previously. So they were like, okay, let's mark them. This will help us to be able to study them. So they painted them red. But then this attracted the lions, because the lions would actually get confused as to which wildebeest was which and wouldn't be able to attack a single
they couldn't coordinate their attacks.
They couldn't coordinate their attacks. So they always went for the one with the gimpy leg, or the one that looked sick and weak, not because they didn't want a delicious, healthy wildebeest, but because that's the only way they could identify it. So when the scientists marked them as red,
that made it really
it made it very simple for these lions to coordinate their attack. What was interesting, though, is if you stand out, the lions will come. And so that's what's kind of cool about this understanding, is everybody that's successful in this life, people are going to criticize you, people are going to belittle you, but that shouldn't deter you from being successful. And so I think that's what we really want to talk about today, is just how we can combat the internet trolls, or those who are trying to keep us down from being successful.
Okay, that's a great lead into this book. It's called Think and Grow Rich. It's by Napoleon Hill. It's super famous.
It's one of those timeless self-help classics.
It's pretty cool because he basically mentored under Andrew Carnegie, the steel icon of the early 1900s. He was just a
business guru.
He just was probably a trillionaire in today's. Trillionaire or billionaire?
He was a billionaire. But he wasn't a trillionaire.
He was really successful. He was very successful. Anyway, so Napoleon Hill got a mentor under Carnegie, and one of his principles to, think and grow rich, or establishing your own success, is to recognize the fear of criticism that each of us have within us. So I think no one likes to be criticized, but once you're aware of this,
it's a little sad.
It is a little. It is. But once you realize that there is this fear inside of us, then you can combat it. So this is what he says. Let us examine some of the symptoms of the fear of criticism. The majority of people permit relatives, friends, and the public at large to so influence them that they cannot live their own lives because they fear criticism. Huge numbers of people make mistakes in marriage, stand by the bargain, and go through life miserable and unhappy because they fear the criticism that may follow if they correct mistakes. Anyone who has submitted to this form of fear knows the irreparable damage it does by destroying ambition, self-reliance, and the desire to achieve. Millions of people neglect to acquire belated educations after having left school because they fear criticism. Countless numbers of men and women, both young and old, permit relatives to wreck their lives in the name of duty because they fear criticism. Duty does not require any person to submit to the destruction of their personal ambitions and the right to live their life in their own way. People refuse to take chances in business because they fear the criticism that may follow if they fail. The fear of criticism in such cases is stronger than the desire for success. Too many people refuse to set high goals for themselves or even neglect selecting a career because they fear the criticism of relatives and friends who may say, "Don't aim so high, people will think you are crazy."
Yeah, so what's actually interesting from what Napoleon Hill just spoke about is the fact that the most criticism that you will receive are usually from those that you love the most.
Yes.
And that's insane.
Why is it that the people that you're closest to, or the people that, like, don't aim so high, you're gonna look crazy? And that happens to us
All
actually
the time.
People are always
All the
like,
time. It's insane. Like, even when I wanted to start my book, first thing somebody I love deeply said to me was like, "Well, you suck at English. You can't do that. Like, you can't be an author." What? What?
Or it's like, sometimes I'll share my dreams or goals and people are like, "Yeah, well, someone else is probably going to be better at that than you."
So dumb. Here's what's actually interesting too, is if we actually read in the scriptures, it says, "Do not cast your pearls before swine." That sounds really bad that I'm calling like our loved ones swine, but it just means don't share that which is sacred to you with people that are going to treat it like garbage.
And it's actually something Elijah and I have gotten. One of the ways we think that you can combat criticism is you actually just kind of mind your business.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been really helpful for us where we try to just mind our own business and keep our dreams and our goals to ourselves. Of course, if people are genuine and want to know, like, we'll share them.
Yeah,
No
absolutely. They actually ask. We also believe the principle of being honest.
Yes.
And so, yeah, we're completely honest with what we're doing.
And we're
but
also very confident in what we're doing. So we have
yes,
it's not that
it's
we're
not
like,
that we're hiding.
it's not that we're afraid of criticism, so we don't share them. But one way to combat that criticism is just like, mind your own business. Keep it to yourself. When things are going great, don't let people know, and when things aren't going so great, also don't let people know. And it keeps you really, really safe and protected from the criticisms of others. What is actually
really cool too is when you do start on your goals and dreams and don't tell anybody, people start to find out like months after you've started, and then you have all of this work and they're like, "Whoa, like,
what have you been up to?
This is actually a thing. Like,
Yeah.
You guys have done this. Like, you have a platform, you have a logo, you have a title, you have 55 episodes out." It's pretty cool. So we are firm believers in just minding your business, and that actually comes from Rich Dad Poor Dad, and he just talks about how it is so vital that you mind your business. And we're not talking just like businesses in terms of finances and in terms of even your tangible business, but even just your own individual life. Don't seek after the drama and everything else that comes with it. But it's just pretty cool because we've seen the success that has brought us in just keeping to ourselves and minding our business, and that's mainly just with each other.
Pretty much. Like, it's just pretty cool because there's select details we like choose to share, choose not to share with people, and what it also does is it also strengthens our relationship because we know that the things that are important to us, like, I don't know, it's almost like we guard each other's dreams.
Yeah.
Like I try to protect, your dreams from, the harsh words of others. The lions but here's the thing, the lions will inevitably come, so then it's like,
you stick your neck out, the sword is going to drop.
So it's like, okay, what do you do?
Mm-hmm.
How do you not let that get to you?
That's a good question. There's actually a story that I want to share, mainly because this includes a guy who's not very tall, which is myself.
Short kings.
Short kings. So anyways, there was a number of years ago, they took like the top 10 CEOs in the world. And the number one who made the most money, who had the greatest success in business, was actually about 5'6". And then the rest of them, the other 9, were over 6 feet tall. And this interviewer came up to the number one CEO in the world, who was the shortest among them. And they had the audacity to ask, like, how do you feel among these literal and metaphorical giants? And greatest response that this CEO could ever say. And he just said, I feel like a dime among nickels. And it just is like, yeah, they might be bigger than me, but I'm worth more.
Boom.
And so it's interesting because that's one of the things that we've talked about with criticism is just being able to, 1, find the humor in it.
Yeah.
2, just do not take it at all. Stand firm in what you believe and stand firm in who you are, just like this CEO did. And said such a beautiful response. I feel like a dime among nickels. And so that's one way to combat criticism is just being so confident and as well as not taking it.
Right.
Like you don't have to sit there and take other people's criticism.
Sure. So like my next question then is like how do you foster that confidence?
Ooh, that's a good question.
I'll answer a little bit of it
For
and
sure.
then you can. I think one way is when you're passionate and when you're living every day believing in your dreams and just having that faith in yourself and like your mission, I don't know, very few people can get to you.
Oh, 100%.
Because you're just so firm in like your resolve and your passion, and I think that's that's a really good way to like foster confidence and combat criticism.
Mm-hmm.
As just being like firm in who you are and believing in yourself.
Yeah. So I'll share another story. So I was mildly famous in the state of Idaho when it came to running. Once you started to branch out, my fame just diminished.
Hometown hero.
Hometown
right?
hero. Anyways, so I was at, I think it was the state championship my sophomore or junior year of high school. And I was in one of the bathroom stalls and this group of guys comes in and they're all talking about Elijah Armstrong. They're like, yeah, Elijah Armstrong, I heard his dad like has steroids for him. Elijah Armstrong, like I heard he does this and that and blah 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 blah. So I'm just in there like literally on the toilet. I'm like, what is going on? Like these kids don't even know who I am, like personally, right? They just know me because of running. So I come out of the stall and they're all just like wide-eyed, like, oh my gosh, like he was in here this whole time. And I start washing my hands and I was just like, yeah, I've heard he's a real punk too. I don't know if I'd associate with him. And then I just walked out. Now, I'm going to add this last part because I think it adds to what Meg was talking about. I went and then won the state championship again. That's how you foster the confidence, right? It's interesting because I put so much work and time and dedication into that passion, into running, that I was so confident in my ability and who I am and what my capabilities were, that it didn't matter what anybody said or did. I knew that I was more than capable and my fitness level was ready and just rearing for success. And so I think that's one way that you combat criticism is just being, I think it's Steve Martin, he was a comedian, and he just said, be so good they can't ignore you. You know, if criticism is coming, that means you're doing something right.
It's a sign you're doing something really
right. That means
right.
that you are standing out, that means you are different, that means that success is on its way.
And that's actually something I actually was going to say that. Yeah, when the lions come, then you know that you are a standout, that you are doing something really right.
Yeah.
Because the lions don't really seem to come after just the
mundane.
Not really.
No, and it's interesting, like even back to that example, lions want the healthiest, strongest wildebeest, but they can't identify it, right? So they go for like the weakest link. They go for somebody who has a camp. They go for somebody who has like an illness or an infirmity. they want the guys who actually stand out, but they just can't find them in that example.
Sure.
Right? But it is actually interesting because if you do stick your neck out and the sword comes, it's like, I guess I'm doing something right. It's true. It's pretty cool.
It is true. Okay, I wanted to read another passage about criticism from this book because I also think it's really good. So this is called The Fear of Criticism. Most people are at the least, very uncomfortable when criticized. In some cases, they may become depressed and despondent when others censure them. The fear of criticism robs people of their initiative, destroys their power of imagination, limits their individuality, takes away their self-reliance, and does them damage in 100 other ways. Parents often do their children irreparable injury by criticizing them. The mother of one of my boyhood chums used to punish him with a switch almost daily, always completing the job with the statement, "You'll end up in prison before you are 20. He was sent to a reform school at age 17. Criticism is the one form of service of which everyone has too much. Everyone has a stock of it that is handed out, gratis whether called for or not. One's nearest relatives are often the worst offenders. It should be recognized as a crime. In reality, it is a crime of the worst nature for any parent to build inferiority complexes in the mind of a child through unnecessary criticism. Employers who understand human nature get the best there is out of people, not by criticism, but by constructive suggestion. Parents may accomplish the same results with their children. Criticism will plant fear or resentment in the human heart, but it will not build love or affection. So I thought that passage was really cool because it kind of explains the impact that you have as a parent with your children. And I think something that we talk about in a lot of podcasts, but that's just because it's something that's so near and dear to my heart, is like, I want to make sure that I'm speaking kind words to my kids always. And that doesn't mean that I won't ever discipline or correct my children, because that's necessary as a parent. It's necessary to guide them.
Discipline is love.
But there's a difference between discipline and criticism.
There's a difference between belittling and correcting.
Right?
Yes.
So it's so if they do something wrong, instead of saying you're the worst and you're going to go to jail before you're 20, you can say
Pull
something
them aside
like,
and say, hey,
okay,
that's not good behavior,
let's figure this out, you
Right.
know? But I think too, I feel like criticism is such a habit within our society, and also it says a lot in this book, it's so just common within families. And so I think it's something that we all instantly, turn to when we're in when we're mad.
You're upset or irritated or whatever.
What's interesting too, so I learned this in marriage and family therapy. What's interesting is a lot of times people use criticism to try to build relationships with other people, in the sense that what they'll do is
foolish.
oh, I have this drama that I can share with you, and by sharing this drama, I'm putting myself in a better light, and then you and I can talk about it, and so we can feel like we're connecting. But that's just so lame, because it's you're speaking ill of somebody, and then it's that doesn't actually form a very good relationship with the person you're sharing the news with, because
you're probably doing this
about
me.
As soon as we finish this conversation, you're probably gonna turn around and
tell people about how garbage I am.
Yes.
Yeah.
So why do you think it's so common within families? Why?
I think it's one of those things that it's just habitual. It's what we've talked about this previously, but it's the habit of lying. It's just as easy to be honest as it is to be dishonest, but people have formed the habit of dishonesty. And I would say it's just as easy to build and uplift as it is to criticize and condemn, but it's the habit. It's very hard to break that habit.
Why do you think it's just the natural man that keeps that, that makes us want to do more?
Well, I think it's
negative
easier
than good, or
no, I just think it's easier to do what's always been done instead of branching out and changing.
Sure.
It's like the poppy that grows the tallest. It's a lot easier to stay down with the other poppies than it is to branch out and be bigger, rise above it. There's actually another story just on this example of parenting and criticizing your kids. There was a famous MLB player, and he went around and he spoke at federal prisons. and he was speaking at one of these prisons, and one of the officers came up to him after his speech, and he said, "You are one of my favorite players. Like, I'm so impressed with you, blah, 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 blah. I'm a big fan." And he goes, "Thank you so much. I'm exactly where my daddy said I would end up." And as he was walking out, one of the prisoners looked at him. He said, "Hey, I'm exactly where my daddy said I would end up." It's actually pretty
It's so
interesting how
powerful.
impactful a parent can be. And I'm sure we all can think back to the moments in our lives where our parents have criticized us as well as built us up.
Yes,
But those still like ping.
always.
There's still a sliver of pain there that's going to forever reside because of a harsh word said in a moment of anger.
Sure.
And I would encourage everybody, just don't live with that regret. Like, strive now to break the habit of criticism and instead build people up. Especially because, just thinking about my own daughters, there's been times that I've been frustrated with them, and they're only 5 months old, but it's like crying for hours and hours and hours, and I'm like, I don't know what you want. Your mom's fed you. You just need to sleep. I don't even know. But I've never once wanted to just condemn them or criticize them or
No.
belittle them, right? And so I would encourage anybody out there who's listening or watching this podcast that they are very, very mindful of the things that they say to others, and also recognize that somebody's opinion of you doesn't have to become your reality. We've said this on previous podcasts, but what's that analogy? The ball analogy?
I was
This
gonna
one's
bring
really
this
good
up.
one. Actually, this makes sense.
This is actually something that it's from Stephen Covey. It's something that I actually do.
She
for
does a
this
really
podcast.
good job about this. She wouldn't say it, but it's one of those principles that if everybody lived by, it'd be really good. And Meg does a really good job at
That's
living
very
by it.
nice of you. So there's this principle. It's like you don't have to catch the ball.
Yeah.
So, when someone throws you this ball of criticism or negativity or whatever they're doing, it's like you don't even have to catch it.
Yeah.
So in my life, what that looks like is, personally, I don't even read the comments because I just know within myself it's just going to make me resentful and probably make me question. Just because
Everything,
that's
what
very
you're doing.
natural.
Yeah.
The thing is I don't know if criticism ever stops stinging just a little bit.
Of course it's gonna
I
sting.
think it always will because no one likes it. It always,
Well,
at least it will always make
it's
you
personal.
Yeah, it's personal. It'll make you a tinge uncomfortable. But my whole thing is you don't even have to catch the ball.
Yeah.
Don't
go there.
There was actually a situation. We've actually had two situations where people have just
People
criticized.
we love.
Yeah, and not, and people we don't even know. They'll question or criticize our parenting.
Yes.
The way we take care of these little girls. And here's the thing. I know at the end of the day, I am doing the very best I can to be a good mom to my babies. I do everything I know how to do.
Babies are fed, they're warm, they're clean,
they're
happy.
I literally do everything I know how, and I can say that at the end of the day, I give the very best in my mothering to my babies. And so when these individuals have thrown this ball of just criticism on how I'm raising my kids, I just don't even catch it. And that's even true with the comments we get. There was this couple, and I was listening to another podcast, and they're really famous and really cool. I think they're super cool. Anyways, and they have tons of fame, but they've remained really grounded and sure of who they are and what they stand for. And something that they said is they were we actually don't even read the comments on our channel, our platform, because when they're good, they we don't want to get big heads.
They don't want to be prideful.
They don't want to be prideful and
vain.
And when they're really bad, it's also
we don't want to be belittled and condemned.
So I'm that's actually pretty cool. And so,
yeah.
I don't know, I think that's one of the ways you and I handle it too, is just don't even catch that ball. You don't have to catch the ball. If someone throws a ball at you, you don't have to actually catch it. And so I just kind of
yeah, throw it to the side. And I think that's a really good way to handle criticism, in addition to everything that we've already said, is just completely just ignore it.
There's such a good story about this. It was about that golfer. Do you remember he won tons of prize money at a golf tournament and goes into the parking lot?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you share that story. This one's pretty cool.
I need to remember all the names of these famous people. But there was a golfer, and he won some major golf tournament, made a significant amount of money. We're talking thousands and thousands of dollars. So after everybody had left the clubhouse, he was the last one to leave, and he goes out into the parking lot, and there was this woman, and she had a baby, and she was like, hey, I have this baby, they're really sick, I'm behind on medical bills, like, could you help me out? And he gave her the entire winnings of the golf tournament. About a month later, he's at a different golf tournament, and one of the, I guess, managers of the tournament comes up to him and says, hey, you know that lady that you helped last month? She was actually a swindler. Like, she robbed you of all your money. And he goes, wait, you mean to tell me there's not a sick baby and she's not behind on her medical bills? And he's like, yeah, it was all a lie. And he goes, man, you just gave me the best news I've heard all day.
What? I'm like, that's cool.
Yeah. It's so cool in the fact because he looked at it at a positive frame of mind instead of a negative. Because instead of being like, man, this girl robbed me, he was like, oh my gosh, there's no sick baby. And she's not behind on her medical bills. Like, that's so good. I'm so glad.
He didn't even catch that ball in any way.
No.
And he could have. That lady just robbed him of his, like...
Winnings. Thousands of dollars.
I mean, and he worked probably super hard to get there.
Absolutely.
And instead, he didn't even catch that ball.
No.
He just... And I feel like that's something I'm trying to... Like, Elijah and I also, I'm trying to figure out ways that I can just, like... You know, like not ways, but like create the frame of mind that when criticism comes that I can like turn around and say things like that. You know, like, and I don't know what those phrases are.
Well,
yet.
there was actually some religious leader high up in one of the church organizations was like, he came and spoke, and one of the ladies came up to him and was like, do you know how many people were sleeping during your talk? Or during your, like, sermon? And he goes, I've heard that church sleep is some of the best sleep that you can possibly get. What a comment, right? Instead of just being like, man, like, I must be a really boring speaker, or thinking about it like that. He's thinking like, man. No, he just didn't care. He disregarded it.
And I think the reason why we bring this topic up is because this is an attribute that all the successful people who we admire and have learned about, they have.
Mm-hmm.
They just are able to turn the other cheek and just respond very well to criticism.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's just that's just a sure principle of success, in my opinion.
Yeah. So, in the future, don't criticize those who are successful because it just makes you look like a fool.
Oh, that's another principle we're going to talk about. Henry Ford.
Oh yeah, Henry Ford. So this man was always criticized of not being very knowledgeable.
He didn't finish high school, right?
Yes.
I think he dropped out of high school.
Yeah, he dropped out of high school.
So he was like known as not being a very educated
man. And so these like people would interview him and ask him all these like crazy out there questions, and then he would make a phone call and have somebody come and give him the answer, and they're like, well, you don't actually know the answer. He's like, why would I waste my time with knowledge on like everything that you're talking about when I've created one of the greatest companies that's ever been created in the world? Right? Here's this one of the greatest innovators of all time.
He made the Model T car.
And people are criticizing him for not having all the knowledge.
So yes, be careful.
Be mindful.
Yeah, definitely.
Don't criticize at all.
Well, don't criticize at all, but also it kind of shows like the light you put yourself in when you do.
Yeah.
Something we've noticed, this is also a very common like thread we've noticed, there's a lot of people in our lives who, like when someone's wealthy,
oh, this is actually really funny.
they love to like criticize the way that
Money.
they spend their money and like their wealth. And
Why would
Elijah
you do this? I'm like, why would you do
okay,
that?
there's like
You have
someone
millions of dollars.
someone in our life is building like an amazing home.
Huge.
It's huge.
It's a mansion
the dream.
home. It has a theater room.
And we were sitting.
It's got a game.
Yes,
all the
it's
all
like
the bells.
literally
and whistles.
so cool. And everybody's like, well, that's just dumb. Like, why are they building this
That's
house?
just a
Mind you,
waste.
this person's paying cash for it too.
Yes,
Literally
they
cash.
have a lot
They
of
have
money.
the money to do it. And everyone's just like dogging on this person who's like doing something super cool. And Elijah
Finally,
and I,
we were like, that's
I was
awesome.
like, this is cool. I'm like,
wow, what a way to spend your
I'm
money.
like, good for him. Like, he's building a really nice home for him and his family to enjoy. And I'm like, good on ya.
Super cool too. Everybody's changed their tune because of it.
Because Elijah
Now
and I were
everybody's
like,
yo, have you seen the house plans?
'Cause we're
They're
like-
so great.
because we're like, this is super cool.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, I don't think it's cool to criticize success.
Well, it goes back to that principle that Stephen Covey talks about, and success is not a finite material.
Yes.
Like, you don't need to criticize others to build yourself up. It doesn't exist. In fact, it actually tears you down. So you actually need to do the opposite. Build others up, and in turn, you will be lifted up on their shoulders.
Right. Just because this man is building his house on the hill
Doesn't mean
that I can't
build my big house on a hill.
It takes nothing away from me.
No.
But I do take something away from myself when I criticize him. It just is not good.
I mean, could you imagine, like, criticizing, for example, Steve Jobs?
People do.
People do all the time. J.K. Rowling? What?
These
What?
people are cool.
Yeah, so don't criticize. It's just a foolish game.
We think
Really?
so.
But instead, build people up.
Be a builder, a good finder,
Yeah.
a positive scripter,
Don't-
an affirmer.
Don't fall to the trap of poppy syndrome.
Yes. And I think the best thing is just, the best way to combat it is just be aware.
Mhm.
Don't be a criticizer. Don't
Hold
criticize,
your tongue.
and it'll help you, not really care when people criticize
Criticize
you.
you.
Because it's just, I don't know. I think it's a sign of weakness, honestly.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay.
That's today's.
Until next time, thank you for listening. Please share this with a friend or a loved one.
Yes.
Particularly those who suffer from criticizing others.
Or who are
I'm
sad
just kidding.
because they're being criticized.
Yes.
Here's
Okay.
the thing. You're awesome. You can do it. Have a good week.
Sweet.
And we'll see you next time.
Peace.
Peace out.